And, Carl will look at the other one the wrong way, and the next thing you know, it's Royal Rumble back in my trailer. There it goes.
Dang it, Carl.
Yep. Say that a lot.
This is Hands Like Hide, a podcast for men who know the weight of a long day, the ache of sore hands, and the pull for something more. Through raw stories, biblical truth, and practical wisdom, we explore recovery, growth, and how to become the man you were intended to be. Because every job teaches, and every story has the power to transform you and everyone you lead. Let's get to work. Jared Berger, what's up, man?
Not much, Troy. How are you, man?
Good, dude. Yeah, you made it. Where are you at right about now, I guess?
Just about to Indiana, coming into Louisville.
Yeah, what do you got on the wagon right now?
Loaded feeder cattle.
And that's where you get all that there burger.
Yep.
That's
I have the beef long before it's on your plate. I'm on like the beginning stretches of that. So
beef, it's truly what's for dinner, right? So like
that's right.
So there's that saying, right? You're going to go to work and make some bread, but like you're literally going to work to make some beef, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I used a whole lot of pigs too, so you could say, bring home the bacon or however you wanted to put it.
Oh man. That's great. So let's talk a little bit, man. Who are you? What are you doing? Obviously, you're hauling some cattle right now out in Indiana somewhere. Where did you load these out of? Did you say? I don't know if you told me yet where you loaded them from. Maryland,
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah. So then, you're obviously bull hauler, as they say in the field, truck driver, as they say for everybody else, but bull hauler sounds way, way cooler. And this is pretty cool. I'm super happy that we can just chat for a little bit here this evening and, give an opportunity to tell your story and your experience about driving. I had this thought in my head before this recording that I was going to be like, get in, sit down, shut up, and hang on. Let's go for a drive, And I was like, that's like insanely corny. But then like Zoom wasn't cooperating on my end and everything. And then it just like, okay, now we're having a conversation. So it's like perfect.
Right.
Oh, man. Best laid plans can just fall to pieces. How about it?
Yeah, that's that's definitely a fact with the trucking thing. I hear people say, trip plan this and plan that and this and that and everything else, and that's always all fine and good. It makes you feel better, I guess, but at least in my world, it seems like we do a lot more just winging it. I mean, you got to plan stuff certain ways, but anytime you do that, like you said, they can just fall apart.
So how do you do that? Because like obviously, I've talked about it some here on the channel. I owned a truck for a while. I'm still kind of in the trucking field, but not driving every day. I drive, once a week or something like that. But most of the time I'm more in the shop wrenching. But, the idea of like planning, trip planning, get your GPS out, get your map out for the kind of stuff that I haul or have hauled. It's freight or it's like equipment, construction machinery, stuff like that. Mainly flatbeds, a lot of steel, lumber, whatever you can put on a flatbed and strap or chain it down. But, and that's one thing. But, hauling livestock and animals, I mean, I can't imagine. That's a whole other ball of wax. I mean, when I drove, like, okay, so most of the time DOT regs in, the United States, typically you can't drive for more than like 11 hours, in a 14-hour period. And so if if you're going cross country or going anywhere of substantial distance, you can get 600 miles a day, something like that, maybe 700 if the traffic is great. But most of the time it's, 400 to 600 miles. Generally like within 11-hour bracket, including your breaks and whatever else, things that don't go according to plan, right? But I mean, in your world though, I can't imagine it's the same. You have, a whole bunch of feeder cows on there and pigs and whatever else live animals you put on your trailer. Like, what's that like in your world?
It's definitely worlds apart. I did a little bit of flatbed in there for, I think it was about 10 months, and
Okay.
it was okay. I went to work for Rich, the guy that taught me to drive and everything. Yeah, he's a great boss and everything, but I had come out of doing this for, I don't remember, I think it was probably 8 years before that. And I don't know if I didn't enjoy it because I thought it was boring, because this whole deal here, it's so much different. Like, whether it's dry freight in a van trailer that's stacked side by side and it's strapped in, or a flatbed where everything's strapped in strapped down to the deck. Everything I have in here, whether it's 60-pound baby calves, or, well, the pigs are a little different because they kind of just, once you get them down the road a little bit, they sort of relax and they just sort of line themselves up and lay down and go to sleep.
Oh, really?
So they don't move much, but these things here, you can feel them in the trailer. They're not strapped down. They don't have seat belts. so they're gated in separate pens, and we sort of load them. I saw a cool analogy of it for people that don't think about exactly how this is done sometimes. That
Sure.
I would rather have a fully loaded trailer, especially with big bulls, or all the way down to these. And the analogy is they had 2 Tupperware containers, and one had like 6 or 8 eggs in it, and they were all real close together. And then the other one had like 3. And the thought process behind that is that relating that to a livestock trailer going down the road, is that you don't want them packed in so tight that they can't move, or it gets too hot or anything like that. But you almost need enough in there that they can sort of lean against each other. So the egg thing was that if you sat the 2 containers of eggs on your driver or on your passenger seat and you jammed on the brakes, well, the 3 eggs are probably going to hit each other and break.
Right.
Whereas the other ones, they may end up with a slight crack, but for the most part, they're generally okay. And that's sort of the same thing here, is it does keep a lot of movement down. The baby calf thing, though, that's a little different too, because since they're so little, you don't really feel them back there, but they're still standing and moving around and doing things, but they're also still babies, so you can easily knock them over. So it definitely takes a lot of care going down the road, especially in your cornering, stopping, starting, all that. The saying that I heard from an old timer that does it, he's been doing this for probably 50 some years, is that slow and steady is actually fast. The easier you are on them, the better they look when they come out of the trailer. And the key is just to keep that left door closed and keep them moving.
Yeah, no doubt. When you were talking about that analogy with the eggs, like, obviously, on Hands Like Hyde, I always talk about, it's about growth, recovery, trying to be a good leader, the best man you could be, husband, father, brother, all that good stuff. And I was just thinking, like, in my mind, as you're describing these Tupperwares and having, the right amount of eggs in there, so there's a little bit of movement. It's not jam-packed so tight that it's like suffocating the thing. But like, if there's not enough eggs, then when life throws you a curveball and you got to slam on the brakes and hit hard, I was just thinking, like, man, that's just like life, because if your support system or your friend circle or your guys, that you talk to every day is like 1 or 2, like, that's good. But what happens if like life slams you in the face? Like, you get a phone call. I was trucking to Vermont one time. This is and I left home. I had a load of aluminum on, and I was going up up 87, up upstate New York,
up the thruway.
Yeah, that's right. And
Yep.
my goal was to kind of get to Vermont around like 3 a.m., something like that. And then, go to sleep. And then, the company up there, they always came banged on my door at 7 a.m., woke me up. And then, you know what I'm saying, we'd get unloaded. But I was, going up the thruway. And, this was before recovery. This was before getting any kind of healing on my end. My wife calls me, and it's like 10:30 at night. And I'd already been on the road, you know what I'm saying, 4 or 5 hours. My wife calls me at 10:30 at night, and she's like, your mom's been in a car accident, and she broke her neck. And, she's, level 1 trauma. She's in the hospital right now. Nobody knows quite yet what's going to happen. She was in a head-on car accident. And, I can tell you, Jared, that from the moment of that phone call, I was driving through the night, till 2 or 3 in the morning, in a state of complete panic and overwhelm, and just the decision of well, do I turn around and not deliver the load, or do I just keep going, deliver the load, trust the people that are here? Back at that time, I chewing tobacco, and I went through so many freaking cans. I probably went through a whole can or two in the span of a night, just trying to keep myself, you know what I mean, my head screwed on straight. And and then I didn't have any. I was like that egg in the Tupperware when it was just me and maybe 1 or 2 other eggs. And I didn't have that support, that, those guys that I could call. It was late at night. Who do I call? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it just, go ahead.
That's funny that you said that, because as soon as I said something about those eggs, and these guys, well, they're girls, they're all heifers back there. When I said that they need somebody to lean on, and I'm like, between the song and that buddy system like you were just talking about, I was like, that kind of makes sense with all that too.
Oh. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. You need somebody to lean on, no doubt. Because it's lonely, man. It's lonely out there driving. And I mean, earlier on we were kind of talking about this ahead of time. Just that idea of when you're driving through the night, what do you do with your mind and your thoughts and your emotions? And especially in situations when you get a call that just blows your world out of the water, or a text, you know what I'm saying? Or something like that. I mean,
oh yeah. Yeah. Especially being, long distance, there's definitely times where, late at night where, all your other buddies are on a different schedule and whatever. And I mean, they're all, the ones I talk to, they're all the same way. If you really need me, call me. But, it's late at night. If all your buddies are all in bed for some reason at night, and you're working the graveyard shift by yourself, it's real easy to, that's like what you were saying the other day about how it's easy to just let thoughts of anything come in of, what could I have done better, even 15 years ago, what if I made that different turn somewhere, and it wouldn't even be where I'm at, so.
Yeah, no doubt. Is there do you ever find yourself, because obviously I think hauling cows and calves and all these things, do you find yourself driving all night, through the wee hours where it's no one on the roads, it's just you out there, you know what I mean, and all your chicken lights on and the chrome glittering off the highway like freaking Santa Claus, and you know what I mean? Is it just you most times, or sometimes?
Yeah, it can be, especially with where I go a lot. I'm heading to the western side of Kansas, and once you get out past the Mississippi River there in St. Louis, and everything starts to quiet down, and then you're rolling across 70 in Kansas at 3 in the morning. There isn't a soul out there on the road. It's not populated enough between those cities and everything, and there's definitely times where you are just completely by yourself. At the same time, sometimes it's kind of nice to have that peace I've delivered in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and 2, 3 o'clock in the morning at a little family farm, not a big commercial feedlot or stuff like that.
Right.
And there's no light pollution out there either. You get certain places and it's just black, and you can actually see probably all the stars that you normally can't see when you're somewhere populated. Light pollution's a real thing, but it's kind of cool because you can get someplace like that and you can shut off all your pretty fancy chicken lights and it's just black.
Wow.
And that's kind of like sometimes I've done that and I've just gotten out of the truck and just stared up there, and it's kind of like a neat way to just take a deep breath and exhale and just be like, you know what, that's cool.
Yeah. Recenter yourself or something like get in touch with something bigger than your current situation and all that.
Well, and like everything trucking wise always seems to be you hit the fast forward button all the time,
right?
And then you do something like that and it's like putting it on 5 times the slow motion. It just kind of sets it back a minute.
Wow, that's a pretty neat experience. So like in those moments, like, I mean, because I'm thinking about needing to like reset a thought or a feeling or thinking, and so to just like take that moment in the cool air of a early, super early morning or super late night, however you want to look at the side of the clock, and just like take that deep breath and slow down. I like the way you worded it. In trucking, and I think in life too, is just the fast forward button, the go fast. We have fastest Wi-Fi. We have we want things to load right now. We don't want to wait for it. We want the fastest drive-through in the fast food restaurant. You know what I'm saying? Like everything is just go fast, go fast, go fast. And even like I love to journal and I like to write. And I've talked to a lot of people who like they can't journal, they can't write, they won't because like writing with a pen and paper requires you to like slow down. Like you have to slow down in order to do that. And like they'd rather just text or voice type into a phone. And I do a lot of that too. Don't get me wrong. Especially when I'm driving, dude. And I don't know if you've experienced this too. Like you're just cruising along, you're minding your own business, and all of a sudden this idea pops into your head, or like a solution to a problem pops into your head, and you're like, holy crap, I got to capture that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
your little aha moments.
Right. Yeah. Like, what do you do in those situations?
Honestly, I guess I'm a little different. I pretty sure that I have a really good memory. My mom still says I do. I remember a lot of stuff from way back when I was like really little, where I probably shouldn't even still remember something like that. 34 or 5 years ago. She's like, how do you still remember that? So a lot of mine are mental notes, and somehow I can manage to keep them stored in my little Rolodex up there, I guess what you would call it. Because I really don't make notes. I mean, I don't know how, but there's I'd like to think I keep most of my life pretty straight just by sticking it in my head, but
yeah, I read an article last week. This dude was talking about how he's like, he deleted all his like journaling content and threw all his books away and all the notes on his notes app on his phone. Like he just deleted all of it. He got rid of all of it. Like, years and years and years of, like a collection, a library of all this stuff. And he was talking about how, deleting all of that stuff allowed his mind to just have all of this, like empty space or space to rest. And it was like approaching ideas and thoughts, and trusting that like your brain or your mind will remember what's actually important, or what's actually relevant. And it'll just kind of like forget all the stuff that's not relevant. And so he just kind of talked about that idea of like trying to capture everything is actually not really a good thing, because like it just takes so much energy. You know what I mean? And
yeah, I can see that would be overwhelming sometimes too. almost like having an overabundance of stuff in your house, and you just look at it like, what am I going to do with all this? So,
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. So, I mean, I don't know how you do it, Jared, because dude, I got a pocket notebook I carry in my back pocket with a little pen in it, and I got like tons of notes on my phone, and I just, I don't know. I'm like afraid for some reason that like if I have this brilliant idea or this creative thought, especially when I'm driving, because like that's when all my stuff hits me is when I'm driving. That like if I don't write it down or capture it somehow, I'll forget it, and then I'll like miss out on this. You know what I mean? This opportunity or this thing or whatever it could be. Like, so I think that's pretty awesome that your brain is such that you can just kind of like just absorb all that.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely nice, and then with the late night trucking, sometimes like we were talking about. I almost wonder if it's a bad thing, because since I'm able to store all that, sometimes it's just like you never stop thinking sometimes. And like, I would say there's definitely some nights, not all of them, but there's definitely some nights where I wish I could just, be that guy that drops both windows at 70 miles an hour and just listens to the truck and no thoughts through his head. But then again, I forget. It was one of the teachings that we grew up with about, an idle mind is a bad thing to have too. So you could look at that either way.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the teachings we grew up with, yeah, I mean, growing up, like my experience, really rigid, very rigid, structured, religious, rules based, where it was like obedience to rules was more important than relationships, in a Christian culture like that. And I totally get what you're talking about, because like letting your mind just wander, especially if it's late at night and you're just driving, it tends to decay. I don't know, maybe that's not the right word to use, but like, you know what I mean? Your thoughts, your feelings, it just seems to start slipping down or back into, well, you mentioned earlier, regrets. If I hadn't have made this decision 15 years ago, where would I be today? You know what I mean? And you just kind of get stuck there,
Yeah, I can definitely see how you can just get stuck. And for some reason, it seems like when you start on that slide, how fast it goes.
Yeah, right.
If you start letting the bad ones come in, it just seems like they'll just, like somebody opened the floodgates, and then just all of a sudden there it is. But then it's time to either reel them in or get some different music on or something. I ended up getting into some other various types of music and everything during and after my divorce, which honestly kind of helped me. And there's just some stuff that I never even dreamed I would listen to. Classic rock and like 90s country and stuff like that, Alabama and all that kind of stuff. But there's definitely certain ones that just somehow I think I figured out the one because I was looking for another song name, and a song of a different genre with the same song name came up, and I'm like, that really makes me freaking happy. Like, it is, so that's kind of cool. That's kind of a perk of this job too, is that you can set your YouTube music on autoplay and figure out where your mood is and just let it go.
Right.
And you can't do that at a factory. You can't do that in an office cubicle. You can't do it at a lot of different jobs where you can just let your music on for 28 hours in a row. So
Yeah, I hear you. What, like when you said, listening to different types or different genres, during and then definitely after your divorce, like, what changed for you, like in those moments, like in that season, I guess? Because, dude, that sounds like, all right, so, for you who's listening to this conversation, Jared and I have known each other, I think, since like the 4th grade or 3rd grade or something like that. It's been a really long time. And, I've been through a divorce. I was a kid when my parents divorced. I was in the 8th grade. And so, Jared, you'd have probably been, what, 6th grade or something like that? 7th grade?
Yeah, I think we were 2 grades apart because you were in the same class as my middle brother.
Right on. Yeah. That's right. And so like, you know, and divorce is so freaking common, man. And, you know, when I went through divorce, when my parents divorced when I was a teenager, the way music changed for me during that season was profound. I mean, you know, and it just the ability to try to run away from, this is my story, right? I used music a lot to try to run away from the pain, or in some ways even validate the pain I was feeling, depending on what I was choosing to listen to. You know what I mean? And then here we are today, fast forward 30 years, you know, it's like there are some songs that like I have a hard time listening to. They definitely trigger, you know, some really bad memories in me during that season. And so like, but like, for you, your perspective going through divorce obviously is, you know, firsthand, front lines. And by the way, dude, I'm sorry that happened to you. Like, that sucks. That sucks. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the whole music thing that I figured out by accident was that, you know, I was so used to listen to classic rock and, you know, the country music and stuff like that. And, you know, the country music, I would say, was not a great idea. So I sort of stepped away from that for a while, you know, because there's so many songs literally about that. Like, there's so many sad country songs, it's not even funny. You know, it's like that stereotype of, oh well, you know, my wife, my dog, I lost my pickup truck, everything left. You know, right. Just so like that stuff sort of, I sort of put that on the back burner. Now I don't have a problem listening to it nowadays. You know, I'm almost 5 years away from that, but I stumbled across some songs from Buckethead, the masked guitarist, you know, and like I always thought it was just strange growing up, and then like, you know, they're instrumentals, but you know, he's got plenty of like robotic sounds and this and that and whatever, but he's also got a lot of ones that are, you know, it sounds kind of funny to say it out loud, but they're really deep. Without any lyrics. Right. But I noticed that those changed my whole mood a lot of times. So that was definitely one that I was expecting to become a fan of. But he definitely has a bunch that seem to be, you know, there's like, I wouldn't even really necessarily call them upbeat, but they definitely lift your mood.
So it sounds like kind of like what I'm hearing you say is if, you know, you're driving down the road on a long trip or even just a short trip from your house to your work, and you're finding yourself going through a lot of, you know, difficult emotions. I'm not going to say bad emotions because I don't think emotions are bad. You know what I'm saying? They're just like happy, sad, mad, glad, afraid, lonely, whatever. They're, you know, some are wanted, some are unwanted. But like if you're going through some that are tough, then, you know, choice of music is something that you have found to be really helpful for you in sort of like managing your moods, especially through your divorce, right?
Oh yeah. It's it's almost like the whole, you know, standing out in the pitch black sky in middle of nowhere, Kansas. It's almost like that instant reset, slow down button. You know, just kind of blow it up a little and, you know, step back and assess what's really going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So like in the world that I'm like, you know, deeply involved in, and I like to talk about it, and I work with some people in it too, is just, you know, the idea of like addiction recovery. So like with addiction, there's this idea about like intensity, and everything is like, you know, you could talk to, you know, like a junkie who's recovered. And, you know, I'm thinking of a friend I had several years ago, and he says, you know, he said things like, yeah, I used to live in LA, and I just lived a hard life. You know, I lived the hard life. They kind of describe it like that, right, for substance abuse stuff. But just for anything like that, you know, it's all about like intensity. And so, you know, one of the things that, you know, we're taught in addiction recovery is to, in like mindfulness, the terms like mindfulness practices. So like you're intentionally stopping, pausing, and like purposefully working through a process of slowing down your thinking, slowing down your heart rate, slowing down your breathing, slowing down your emotions, because somebody, I've read some of his books. He's a therapist in this field. His name's Eddie Caparucci. He says basically, recovery and growth is basically one thing: slow everything down. Right. And he always says it like really slow. He's like talking. He's like, slow everything down. And
you really try to drive it home.
Yeah, really drive it home. And I hear you saying that, like in your story with going through your divorce, you're cruising down the road, your thoughts, and like I'm putting myself in your shoes if I was sitting in your truck right now, flying down the road, and just like all this is going through, like, the night my mom broke her neck, right? It just like, the mind is going crazy with racing thoughts, and it's like, how do I stop this thing? And you literally had to stop, pull the truck over, get out, pull the brakes. You know what I'm saying? Like, you literally had to stop and walk away a little bit and just like take a deep breath and look up. And I think that in that process, that's exactly what you're doing there. And the same with music, finding different music choices. Because like, I think, at least for me, if I'm in an amped up mood, or I find myself in that mindset of like intensity, listening to really intense music is not a good idea. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to put on like,
right,
man, Korn or Slipknot or Metallica or something like that,
right.
Because there was one night, Jared, like,
just magnifies it.
Dude, like, okay, Metallica's song Enter Sandman. There was one night, this happened years ago. My household growing up was really, really messed up. A lot of abuse, a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of physical abuse, emotional abuse. Like, it was really messed up. And to this day, I don't, I've had to set some boundaries with my dad, and we haven't talked for, quite a few years now. And then just, working through that, but let's not go too far there. 10 or 15 years ago, before getting healing, before getting to some therapy and some help and trying to work through some of this stuff, I was really mad at my dad. And I mean, I just, like, there was a situation that happened. It was like, trauma, abuse stuff was triggered in me from childhood, and it all came up, and I was like, I went into this rage fit, right? And so I like walked out of the house, and we had this picnic table behind the house, and I literally like grabbed the picnic table and flipped it over. Like, I just threw the thing, and it broke, and my wife is there, and she's trying to like calm me down, and I was just like really mad. And it was later on that night, I went for a drive, right? We're talking about drive. I was like, I need to go for a drive. And I got in my pickup truck, and I just went for a drive. But it was like one of those drives that's like, you're really angry, you know what I mean? Like a rage drive. And I was just trying to like process through some of these things and work through it. And I had the radio playing, classic rock station, because I listen to that a lot. And Enter Sandman came on from Metallica, and it was just like, the drums were slamming, the guitar was going, and he just started in singing them lines, and my anger got way worse, dude. And I mean, like I lost it. Like, I actually went to my dad's house, and when I was on my way there, I called my wife, and I never thought I would ever say the words. I was like, you need to come to Dad's house. I need help, because I'm going there to kill him. And she was like, calm down, take a couple breaths. And I was like, I found myself in such a helpless state of mind that, like, you know what I mean? I was the one egg in the Tupperware, and I was reaching out to the only other egg I knew at the time. And that was my wife, like, please come help me, because we're about to break wide open. You know what I mean? And that song just like put me into such a state of mind that like, I wasn't in control of myself in that moment. I let those thoughts go there, and like, dude, seriously, I went there to kill him. That was my intent. And I was just so fed up.
Oh, wow.
That was my intent. And my wife pulled into the driveway behind me, and, we ended up having a conversation, and, nothing bad happened that night. I was able to kind of drive home and just kind of process through that. But like, to this day, when that song comes on the radio, that's where my mind goes, without me wanting it. It's a trigger, right? It's like, it automatically goes to that night where,
it's just there.
It's just there, man, whether I want it or not, you know? And so, yeah, dude, music's crazy, right? Back to what you said, 15 years ago, if I'd have made a different decision, if I'd have made a decision to not go for a drive that night, and not hear that song, do I ever think I'd actually ever put myself in a position where I could actually do something like that? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Yeah, it's stuff you think.
Or could you listen to it nowadays and not think that?
Yeah, and not have that horrible memory attached to it. That horrible,
right?
Yeah. When I'd retell the story, or when my wife talk about that night, like her experience from it is just like it was freaking go time. You know what I mean? Like, it was go time.
Right.
We were not messing around.
Right.
It can go. Is going for a drive always good for you? I don't know. Maybe sometimes it's not.
Yeah, I think sometimes it might not be. And then that's the other thing. Like I was telling you the other day about the long distance thing is like, and you gotta find those ways to like reel it in, because when you're doing it this way and not just a rage drive, drive to calm you down, whatever the case might be, like you're stuck in it. Like, right. So you gotta go and make your delivery how you're supposed to and everything. So when that drive becomes not a good idea, you still have to do it. So there's that whole trying to find your own little reset button to fix it so you can keep on going and safely. So
right. So besides like calling your guys if they're available, or listening to different kinds of music, what other things in your experience? Because how many miles do you drive a year, I guess, right? Because I feel like there's no better person to talk to who has experience with driving endurance stuff, long distance, and has, like a lot to show for it. I mean, you've been through a divorce, you were driving all through that. That's some hard stuff to deal with, but like, how do you manage that besides, changing the channel or calling somebody? What do you do in those moments?
Well, I mean, I guess it would, depend on the situation, but I would say the opposite of what some people do. They're at home, whatever, and they're like, I'm going to go for a drive. Well, if you switch it completely, 180 degrees, a good thing to do is to, yank over at a decent spot and, take a walk. You're just you're just reversing it completely. You're pulling that Uno reverse card on yourself. Need to stop staring at traffic or whatever. Just find one of your favorite stops to go to and park as far away as you possibly can and go take that walk into the truck stop and grab a coffee. Just something to, like I said, just that little reset button here and there. And sometimes, depending on what I'm doing, with the animals, stop and check on them and pick on them a little bit.
Yeah.
We call them snoot boops. But with the cattle, you just they're kind of nosy, especially Holstein cows. You walk up beside them and they're they got their heads up near the holes in the trailer and everything. And you just stick your finger in there and boop, right them on the nose. And it kind of makes you laugh or something, breaks up something. Or, little calves, they like to eat everything. So if you stick your finger in there, they're gonna think it's mom and they're gonna try and start eating it. So
that's cool.
they're with their little sandpaper tongues, and I take the kids trucking, so they like doing that kind of stuff. And
right, what's your favorite what's your favorite animal to haul?
That's kind of a hard decision. I mean, the calves, the baby calves are fun. They're little. You could. When they unload them, they just pick them up, like a little forklift. They get underneath their belly and haul them off and stick them in their little calf huts and stuff. As far as, I mean, I like plenty of excitement, so I would have to say I enjoy hauling my big bulls the most.
Yeah, what's that like?
Yeah, it's it can be hair raising. You could go from a couple well-behaved guys that are going to go into the trailer just fine on their own, and then we've had 2,400-pound Brahman bulls that just send you over the fence, like,
No way.
which I've never been chucked over a fence, thank God, but I've jumped or climbed up fences to get away from stuff like that. I think all that's exciting. I love doing that. That there's because you have to be on your A game every time you load or unload those things.
Yeah.
And even driving down the road, when they're 1,800 to 2,500 pounds a piece of just pure testosterone filled muscle of an animal that could just knock your block off in one shot. You gotta be on your A game, but you also can't let them things know that you're afraid of them. Like, you can't show them that, because they can sense it.
No way.
So even though I sit here in this Peterbilt right now at 155 pounds soaking wet, and I'm going up against something like that, I gotta act like I'm bigger and tougher than they are. So it's what is that from Full Metal Jacket? Show me your war face. I mean, you can't be a jerk to them, but you still got to let them know that you're the boss, even though you're little.
Yeah.
But even going down the road, you got to be on your A game with them, because when they move, it.
Really?
Yeah, I've been going down the road, and a lot of times they don't like each other. Sometimes that's what their problem is too. They're trying to figure out who the alpha is, and they'll lock heads and they'll just go at it.
No
and
way.
They do stuff like that in the trailer, where you'll be going down the road and all of a sudden it'll feel like a big truck just rear-ended you, because they just jerk the whole vehicle that much from just being as big as they are. So, like, at any given time, you could be going down the road and they've been riding good, they're all nice and still, they're all lined up, and then I call a lot of my animals, usually the cows and bulls and everything, I nicknamed them Carl. And Carl will look at the other one the wrong way, and the next thing it's Royal Rumble back in my trailer. There it goes.
Dang it, Carl.
Yep. Say that a lot.
Oh my god, that's so.
But yeah, they, like I said, they could be fine, and then somebody gives the other one a side eye, and the next thing you know, it's on.
Oh man, like freaking Donkey Kong, right?
That's a fact. So yeah, I would say that those are my favorite, just because of the excitement that goes along with it. Of I guess the fact that it's slightly dangerous.
Right? Dude, yeah, like I'm picturing the driver, and I've done this, man. Open cupped coffee, right? Like just a mug, and you're just driving down with your coffee mug, open topped, and then like Carl decides to beat up on another Carl, like he's coffee.
Yep, exactly.
Dang it, Carl! And now you're trying to get the hot coffee off your pants.
Yep.
Oh man. Wow. What so when you pick up a load of bulls, obviously they're going to slaughter, right?
Yeah, when I get them, they're on the end of the road on that one.
Right. And so where do you pick them up typically?
Typically I pick them up all over Texas.
Yeah, okay. Right. And then from Texas, where are you going from there?
They go up there to northern Pennsylvania, just up off I-80.
So then, okay, so walk me through then, like if I was shadowing you for a couple of days, right? You'd get to Texas. What time of the day? Like, what would that look like?
Hot, very hot.
Yeah.
It's usually we try and start loading them fairly early in the morning. You try and work as best you can around the weather,
right?
Especially in the summer. You try and do things early in the morning, late at night, things like that. The loading and unloading is the most stressful thing on them.
Yeah.
So if you can try and do it as early as possible when it's slightly cooler out, then once you're got all your stops picked up and everything, you're on the road and moving with the air flowing through the trailer. So that it helps. It definitely helps with that.
So how long does it take to load? Like, say your biggest stop with the most bulls. Like, how long would that take to load?
So with trucking, everything's different. Every load's different.
Sure.
These things are the same way. And the count doesn't even really matter, because I've had it where, one pickup I was picking 12 of them up, and they all just, like, they were fully trained, just walked right into the trailer, took their name and number and walked right in.
Yeah.
Well, then I could have a stop a couple hours from there, and I'm only supposed to get 3. Well, they may have had them penned separately where they haven't fought their rage out yet. Well, now all of a sudden you're there for 2 hours because, they're having their WWE match. And, you're there for 2 hours to load 3 bulls, and the 12 bulls only took 10 minutes to go on your trailer. So it can change that much.
The 12 bulls are like, come on, guys, let's just go.
Yeah.
Come on, Carl.
Yeah, dang it, Carl. Come on, let's go. We had it figured out. Why can't you? Yeah.
That's right. They're going, dang it, Carl. That's good. Okay, so when you go to Texas to load bulls, then it's not just one stop. You're picking up multiple stops.
Usually, yeah.
Got
Yeah, I've had a minimum of like 2, and then I think the most I've had was 7 different livestock auctions that I picked up from.
Oh, right on. Okay. So then what's a full trailer? Is it like by weight or number of bulls?
Most of them are done by weight, because you can't load, for regular, like, steer, feedlot load going to slaughter for, your prime steaks and this and that and everything else. They're in that like 1,400 pound range. Well, you can put like 32, 34 in there. That's probably around 48,000, I guess, something like that. But then, with your bulls being 18 to, over 2,000, 2,500, whatever.
Right. 24, 27 bulls. Right. Got it.
Yep.
So then.
Yeah. So you'll cut them down just because they're that big, in one section of my trailer where I could put, 6 full grown steers. There's times where I can only put like 4 full-grown bulls in that same section.
Bulls, got it. So your trailer's pretty modular. Sounds like you got doors and panels that open, close, and things move all over the place.
Yeah, lots of gates and ramps. They're actually, not one layer in the trailer. Like a general freight trailer, it's just, one solid flat floor, and you can stack stuff and do whatever. These things here, they actually have a full upper floor. So for the big stuff, there would be one pen up front directly over my wheels in my truck. And then how you would load it is you load that one first. This is if you're just getting one full load from the same place.
I got
then you would go to the top and load the next 2. And then you load the belly, which is, the very bottom in between your trailer axles and your truck, and then you have a tail end on it too. But now, like, this trailer is actually a 4-deck trailer. So I could go 2 to 3 to 4, and they're basically like aluminum. They look like 2x6s or 2x8s.
Okay.
But they're not solid. So when I take them out of the sections where they would be in the rails that I'm using them, they stack inside of each other, and then they go in another rail up in the ceiling in a storage rack.
I gotcha. So how long does it take you, like, to say, say you hold a load where it was, calves, so you had your 4-deck trailer all set up and all 4 decks were full, and then you're going to go load bulls. And so in that scenario, how long would it take you to break down and set the trailer up to load bulls then?
If I'm in a hurry, or if I just want to do a little bit more of a workout, I guess. I never really timed it, but I think the quickest I can do it is about 25 minutes.
25 minutes. Now listen,
yeah.
people. Listen. Remember, he's 155 pounds soaking wet. Come on.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of lifting. It's a lot of crawling around when the decks are in place. Usually, I'll unload stuff in Texas. So when I break the trailer down in the afternoon, it's triple digit temperatures. So I'll extend it and slow it down to about 45 minutes or so. So just take your time a little bit more.
Right. So you're loaded up, right? You got a full load of bulls on in Texas, and you're full and you're loaded, and it's time to go northbound, right? So then, it's probably mid-afternoon?
Yeah, usually about that. Yep.
Yeah, and then your day starts. What, you run a few hours and take a nap, or what does it look like from that point on?
A lot of times, at least what I do is I 4 a.m. doesn't agree with me. I don't like it. It doesn't like me. So that's between 4 and 6 is about my normal. So I try and get everything done, and especially in the summer, that's usually their coolest part of the day too. To stop and get your break in and get your fuel and coffee and do whatever else that you need to be doing. But that's usually about where I try to run to. And
the next day, what time you pulling into upstate Pennsylvania to unload?
If you're finished loading at a decent timer in the middle of the afternoon or so, it would probably be about, I'd say, between 6 and 9 o'clock or so at night, something like that.
6 and 9 p.m. you get to unload.
Yeah, usually, probably something like that. Now, if you're feeling like $1 million, you could be there like 4.
Yeah, and how many miles do you think that is?
Depending on where you start and where your pickups are, it's usually in the 16 to 1,750 mile range.
Man, there it is.
Somewhere around that.
So it's like in the beginning, we're talking about most drivers, traditionally most drivers can run about, somewhere between 400-600, a little bit more a day. And that's what's considered a lot. I mean, I've heard some drivers, they sit there and they brag about, running 650 miles every day. But, when you want to look at it from somebody who's walked the walk or driven the road or been there, Jared, you're somebody who, you know what I mean? You have what it takes to do what needs done, and you do it. And it sounds like awesome. It sounds too, dude, like you love those animals. You mess around with them. You have a pet name for them. You know what I'm saying? Like,
oh yeah, we always try and take the best care of them. I mean, a lot of times they are on their last ride too, but we still do our best to always make sure they show up one piece, healthy, just the way we picked them up. The calves are a big one for that. You're leaving way up here around our home and going to Texas in the winter, so you're leaving winter time and you're showing up in 55 40. Well, it's well above freezing a lot of times down there. So you end up doing a lot of weather adjusting for especially those baby calves, because they don't have any body fat on them yet or anything like that. So they take quite a bit of extra care. But there's a lot of people out there that think we don't care about our animals because of where they're going and everything, but we actually probably care more than most. So
yeah, no, I hear it, and I hear it in your voice too. Of course I know you too, and you're a genuine dude, and I think that what you have to share in your experience and your story, what you do out there on the road, just the advice of what you shared with us today, with me today, stopping and going for a walk, sometimes is some of the most beneficial things to get your brain out, stuck out of this like negative loop or whatever. And from what I'm hearing you share too, it's just, it's real experience from your own story, going through divorce, a couple job changes and just kind of navigating a difficult season. And that's the kind of stuff that makes everybody awesome, and the freaking metaphor of eggs in a Tupperware, like that is brilliant. That is brilliant. find your eggs, man, to join you in your Tupperware, however you want to word it. Like, it's good.
Right? Yeah, that one definitely worked on several different levels, actually.
Oh, it's good, man. Yeah, I loved it, man. And so, Jared, I appreciate you so much for being able to kind of do this with me here today, and thanks for sharing everything. And I wish you, like, the best trip, good energy, safe travels, and the next load of Carls that you pick up, I hope they're like all the kind ones, right? That would be good.
Yeah, they're not quite as exciting when they're nice.
Yeah, I get you too. I guess that helps you too when you're pulling an overnighter from Texas to Pennsylvania and you got a rowdy bunch of Carls back there. It probably keeps you on your toes, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's for sure.
Oh, man. Well, brother, thank you so much for talking. This has been an amazing conversation, and I look forward to talking to you here soon, man. Okay?
Yeah, man, I enjoyed it.
Thanks, brother. Have a good night. We'll see you.
All right.